I want to first off thank everybody, and especially for Sandy and the Baltimore Camera Club for allowing me to make this presentation of something that I truly love. I have about 50 years of experience that I'm going to try to give some parts of it to you in the next hour. And most importantly, what I'd like to do is to give you inspiration to do flower photography, and in particular, macro and up close photography. I'm going to start out with a little video. It's a slideshow. And let's see if it all pops together.
Is speaking, and it will be recorded.
So these are some of my earlier pictures. And these were, my first love was orchids. And I did a lot of competition in orchid photography. Most of these are done with just the light on in nature. They're all live. Some of them you can see I've started to change them around. This was done in my basement. It's a true macro photography. All of these are done 1-to-1 on the macro. That's the angel. And Casper. That's artistic. And this is just some white bells in my backyard. This picture, I think you saw last week or 2 weeks ago. These water lilies all come from Longwood Gardens. And if you want, we'll talk about and this is one of my favorite flowers is the hibiscus. This is just a and you always have to be prepared for these intruders called little bugs that get into your flower pictures. So be ready for that. This was at Longwood Gardens. It's a composite. Just a nice little scene. That's my grandma's favorite flowers. And that's a hosta. And that's me walking down a flower trail at Longwood Gardens. And let's see, everybody still there, Sandy? Yes, we are. Okay. So
Everybody is here
good.
and we can
Okay.
see your screen.
Okay. So what I wanted to start out with, and I do most all my beginning work, at least, and my my cataloging and culling inside of Lightroom. And so these are pictures which go back to where are we? Metadata. No. Okay, well, it's not on there, but these go back to 2011. And it's taken on a 12 megapixel Kodak. Everybody wants to know, but it's a Kodak 12NX or 14NX camera. And luckily at that time in Longwood, they offered nighttime courses in photography. And so I would go there for, I think it's either 4 or 5 weeks in a row, stay overnight, take pictures, and then take pictures the next day. And what was great is they let us into certain parts of the conservatory and they turned off all the vents. And because of that, I was able to take these pictures and people from all over the world come to see these blue poppies. And I was with them, just me by myself in no wind, nothing blowing around. And that's one thing you have to think about if you're going to be using flowers in your own basement or your wherever you're going to take them, is the slightest little movement is going to really harm the focus of your pictures. So if and when I do take pictures down in my studio in my basement, I turn off the fans in the house. Everything has got to be absolutely still. So what I'm going to do with this picture, and we'll go to some of and these were all taken in sequence. And I call this the protection, and, you know, nature builds its way of helping protect anybody who wants to pick this flower. They're going to get themselves full of stickers. And you're never happy with a single flower or visiting something for just one time. You have to learn and you have to sit there and study it and look at it from different angles and look at it through your camera lens. And because what you see through your lens is different than what you see in person. So the first picture, yeah, I got the flower, but I didn't see enough of the inside. Here I'm seeing the inside and the stamen. So this is the female part. This is what produces the pollen. And so the pollinators will land in here because it smells nice. They take the pollen and dispose of it. And I particularly like this picture because the way that, you know, the pollen and the stamen are all captured within this beautiful petal. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this. It's a dark picture today. I wouldn't be so happy with it, but I'm happy with it. And what I do is I'm bringing it into the develop module. Let's get rid of the sidebar here so we have some more room. And first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to push on something called auto. In the past, auto has not been so good. It's amazing what Lightroom has done, but auto is just a fascinating thing right now. And I'm still going to take down some more of the highlights. And I look up here at my histogram and I don't want anything over here. Okay, but I'm going to increase my exposure. And if you do, you see how my exposure, my little histogram here comes to the right. I do not want this on the right side. Okay. The left side where there's shadows, it's okay. But on the right side, you don't. It's not going to show up good when you're projecting it, because it's going to, you know, when you're projecting it or when you're seeing it through your laptop, what happens is it's lit from behind, and anything that's light like that is going to be totally blown out. So keep away from here. And when I expose, though, I want to expose for this lightest point. So actually, when I expose, now I go all the way over here, and I don't care about the darks, and then I develop for the darks. In the past, when we had film, I exposed for the darks, and I went ahead and I developed for the lights. But over here, you want to expose for the lights in digital, and let's go on with this now. Okay. Lens correction. I don't even know if they would even remember what lenses I used then, but I was using Nikon. And you see it flipped it up. I wasn't using a 6-24, but it picked it up. I was using a 200 macro. It's lined up nicely, so I don't need any transformations. I'm going to go into the basics. I'm going to still bring down my highlights a bit. And the shadows. Now, one thing with shadows, if you bring out too much of the shadows, you're going to get yourself a little white line about things, because what shadows does, it decreases that space between dark and light, and then you get the little white band around everything. You can increase your textures, and you can see that brings it up a bit. I like to use dehaze, and dehaze is just light contrast. So your clarity is mid-tone contrast, and dehaze is your light or white contrast. As far as vibrance and saturation, vibrance, really all that does is it takes whatever isn't saturated and makes it saturated. So that would bring things up, but it brings up just those. If I want to bring everything up, I actually bring my vibrance down and I bring my saturation up. You can see it's really super saturating those oranges. And you have tone curves. So it does what tone curves are supposed to do. I don't use those very often. I'm not going to go through everything that I do or don't do, because I'd like to show you some important things. One thing it does, you can see there are a couple of dust spots here and here. I'm not going to go through every one of them, but they actually do a pretty good job now in Lightroom getting rid of the dust spots. I hit my left bracket key to get it down to almost the size of it. And I just give it one blip, and it's going to bring, I can move this around to different areas if I want. No, come on, baby. Come on, baby, go back there. Okay. And let's get rid of this little one here. I'm going to make myself a little smaller. And it's going to pick out something. It usually does a pretty nice job. Okay. The next thing that I notice is that the, you know, what is it that I'm interested in looking at? Is it the picture of the flower with the stamen and the pistils? Is it this other flower? Do I want to include background? Background makes pictures. On the other hand, maybe I don't want so much background. So I can hit R for crop, and then I hit L twice, and that turns out my lights, and I can start to crop in and decide what is it I want. Now they have predetermined crops, and they have freestyle cropping, which is what I'm doing. Now I can move this around. What's cool about this is here forever, your picture. Hello. L for light. I'm going to come back here where it says custom, go to 1-to-1. So it's going to make me a square. And I'm going to put the stamen right on that diagonal. And I'm going to move it up. Now over here, the stem was too bright. So rather than futz around with it, I'm just going to get rid of it. And you can see we have very nice detail that's in here. Hit into Z for zoom. And if I have time, I'll get into Photoshop and I'll show you how to clean up these little dark areas. Why not? We'll just go over there now, Command D, or let's just, okay. This is the most fascinating thing that's going on now with Lightroom is the masking. I can mask now, let's say if I mask the entire subject, and boom, and it did such a marvelous job. And then I come down here to exposure and I can darken it up, lighten it up. And I want it a little darker and I want it a little bluer. And you can see it also darkened down all of my yellow stigmas and stamens. So I'm going to do a subtraction and I'm going to do a brush. I'm going to paint over this. And if I want to see where the overlay is, I just turn that on. And my flow was way down, so let's turn it way up. I'm doing this with, I have a pad with me, but I'm not using that because I don't know how many people have pads. Turn off that. And if I hit my backslash, it's going to bring me back to the original picture. Right? Now, if I want to bring out more yellow in this, I'm going to go out of, I want to show you this other thing. It's called auto mask. It's either on or off. And when you turn it on, that little there, it is a minus and it goes to a plus. That will just go right down to the edge of what you want. Thing is, it's a little bit slower than using no auto mask. So initially I'll use with the auto mask on my edges, and then I'll go down and I'll use the larger one for the other areas. It fills in a lot quicker. So I'm happy with this for now. And I'm going to go close. Come on up. Oh, I am up. Okay. Basic. Okay. Now, one other thing I was showing Sandy the other day. First off, I'm going to go to hue, saturation, and lightness. And this is luminance. If I click on here, I go to the yellow. And you see how it popped it up? Boom. And it's just going to do that on the yellow. I can go as much as I want. If I want it, I can change the saturation on it. So there is no saturation, and I like it to be saturated. So we're going to do that. Everything is to taste. There is nobody can tell you do it this way or do it that way. It's to taste. Now, whether or not somebody else likes it's another story, like when you go to have judging. All right. I am also not happy with the lightness over here because this is bringing my eye out. So I can do one of two things. I could either crop this in, or let's go back to the magic here. We're going to create a new mask. This time I'm going to do a radial. No, I'm going to go and I'm going to new mask. I'm going to get a brush, make my brush big, and I'm going to bring my exposure way down. And I'm not going to go, I'm just going to use the plus part on the edge. And you see, you can burn in which I can do, and I am. And that's a little much. So now you can go down here and you can take it back, or you can bring it in a little. And you just want to bring it in whenever you're doing this. You want to make it so it doesn't, so you're not really set. Okay. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to bring this over to Photoshop by doing a Command E. Oh, I got to get out of this first. Close. When it starts to go click, click, you got to look up and see what you're doing. Okay. That. Okay. Lightroom, photo, edit. It's grayed out. I don't know why, but it is. Okay. So we're going to do what we normally do. Just
Yeah,
go on. So
Paul,
let's go to the next.
Paul.
Yes.
If you go up to where you did the brush head and hit those three lines to the left up here,
Yeah.
all the way over. Keep on up. No, stay where you at,
Okay.
and go all the way over to those three symbols to the left of it. Gotta close it down. Yeah, right there.
Oh. Okay. No. It's clicking away, Kenny. Thank you. Yeah. Well, anyway, we're going to do what we normally do. Continue. So sometimes things happen that you don't want to happen. And coming back, as you can see, what I did here is I actually trimmed off the top. And I think I might have extended the blue a little bit in certain places. But this picture was taken, it was a 1/4 second exposure in natural light. And that's only because there was nothing around there. I was very lucky, very, very fortunate. So we're going to go on to do some others. All right. This is to show about doing some cropping. And you can see this is the original picture. What's really great about Lightroom is all the changes you make, everything you do is stored there forever, and you can go back in it. And the same thing with cropping. So this is the original crop. And you can see it's very, what I call busy. You have to determine what is it that you really want. Now, you see that's the flower there, and this is inside of most orchids in the center part are these little people that live there. And you have to discover them. There actually been books about the people inside of orchids. And you have to just make LL twice will give you what you want, and you decide how you want to line that up, whether you put it on the diagonal, whether you go big. So I wanted to go a little smaller here. Double click it. And as long as it's not coming apart, in today's cameras, you can do a lot of cropping without it. And here, this is not today's camera. This is a yesterday's camera. And so going to another one. Okay, so here's another flower picture. This is right out of the camera. One thing that I see here right away is that it's not lined up. And by the way, this is an orchid. And the reason that they call this an orchid is because orchid or is either Greek or Latin for testicle. And so these look like testicles hanging. So that's how this flower got its name. I am going to straighten this out first. And so I can come in here, I follow my guidelines. And so I was looking at you could either try straight down the middle, which is what I might do. There. And instead of these two edges being exactly across from each other, it's just like when you do portrait photography, you don't want the eyes exactly at the same level. You want to keep the head slightly tipped and you want the eyes to be on different levels. But this actually looks like a big nose over here, and his mouth, it could look like a cat's mouth. So, you know, let your imagination take over. The green in the back is compromising the picture because red and green are complementary colors, and therefore my eye is also going to this. So I'm going to have to do something with that. This and this are supports for the flower. All these flower pictures, most of them were taking it at international competitions. I used to be able to get in and take an hour or 2 hours of pictures all by myself because I volunteered to do scribe work. There were 5 people in a group and I would be a scribe. And I really enjoyed doing that. And once again, I'm going to go to auto to start out with. You see how that popped it open? We got a little goober here. I call them goobers. I want to bring this back to here. And you see you can move it around a bit to see what I'm liking. I said, okay, and let's close that out. And now I want to bring my highlights. You see the highlights are down quite a bit. To get them up, if I increase my exposure and then decrease my highlights, and I'm going to increase the exposure. And you just do this to taste. And you got to make sure that you have, your monitor has to be calibrated. So that would be a nice thing, everybody, to learn how to calibrate monitors. It could be something to do at a meeting. So over here, I'm playing around with contrast. And you can see how the slight amount of contrast is giving me a blacker background. And it makes the picture pop. Makes the picture pop. I'm going to save getting rid of these things. Well, I'll show you how to do this again. Let's go over here to the little mask thing. We're going to, on the top here, you can do subject, sky, and background. I'm going to do subject. And it's going to give me a mask. And that's amazing. You know, to me, to get a mask like this last year, 2 years ago, wow, it would take me many minutes. But I want to take care of the outside of the mask. So if I come over here to, I call this a hamburger, right? Okay. So I'm going to duplicate this and invert the mask. So I'm going to keep the original mask, but I'm going to invert it. So now what's going to happen is, and I'm going to put the exposure up and down, and you can see I can basically get this by itself. Okay, so that brings me up to another thing, is that when you're taking these pictures, and a lot of people want to know, how can I get the background black? There are a number of ways. Number one is take a piece of black material and put behind it. Make sure it's not reflective black, especially if you're using velvet or velour. So there's matte black cloth, and then there's reflective. So on the background, you want to use a matte. And if it's on a floor, you want to use reflective. And the other way you can do it is just take a box and go to Home Depot or Lowe's and get spray enamel paint matte black, and go outside and make sure it's well ventilated, and give yourself a nice big black box, and that will work. And it's a beautiful way of doing it. And then you stick your flower in there, and you have to manipulate it, but that's a whole thing unto itself. But if I take the exposure and turn it all the way down, comes black. Now, if I add color to it, it's not doing anything. So if I'm moving the temperature around, you can see, because black is not a color. Okay, so if I bring the exposure up, let's go back up a little. Now, if I bring my colors, you can see it's blue, it's yellow. But once I go to expose and I turn it all the way down, black is black. It's not a color. It's the absence of color. If you can take a look up here, I have mine at what they call lab, and the lab color for this, it's light is 0.3. If you read these up here, when I take it away, it doesn't read. And A is 0, and B is 0.2. Okay. And you can see over here for these others, my light point or my luminosity is 75. A is 5.1, and B is 17.3. So 5.1 is red and 17.3 is yellow. So that's what this is. But that's his nose over here. I love his nose. So what we're going to do is we're going to hopefully,
Paul?
yes, ma'am.
Yeah, this is Sandy.
Yeah.
Tina's been asking a question. Tina, would
Yep.
you like to ask your question about the histogram and colors right now? It's a
Okay.
good time.
Oh, okay. I was asking with the histogram, how do you know which colors are right, which colors are wrong? Like if you are too hot or over or underexposed with the histogram, when you look at those colors, how do you know which ones are, when you look at it, if your picture is correct or not?
Well, basically you use your eyes. Don't even look at the histogram.
Okay.
So if your eyes tell you yucky, that's, or it says it's on fire, you just have to, like when you put on nail polish, how bright a nail
Okay.
polish do you put on? Or you put on your lipstick? You do
Okay.
it to taste. And
Okay.
the next day it might be a little different. So we're not doing product photography. So in
Okay.
product photography, you have to do exact colors. So there we use colorimeters. We use all different things in order to get the color exactly the way we want it.
Okay.
And
Okay.
over here, it's to taste. You want to stay off of here. This is the big thing. You want to
Okay.
stay off of here. That's your maximum. You want to go is over to here.
Okay.
You can run up
Okay.
the hill on the black side, but on the white side, once you get to here, there is nothing to be seen but just white yuck.
Okay.
And that will
Okay.
print out as white yuck,
Okay.
useless.
Okay.
So I don't know if that answers your question.
Okay, you said one side was the black side, one side was the white side. That helps. That
Right.
helps.
So this is your
Okay.
white is on the right, and this is your black.
Okay.
It's on the left, and it says so. See, it says
Okay.
blacks, and you go into your
Okay.
shadows,
Okay.
and that goes into your whites, and this is going to go into your
Okay.
highlights. So you saw how this over here as you go across. Now you can actually move the histogram right up here.
Okay.
You see how that's moving it?
Yes.
Okay. So
All right.
it's basically up to you to decide, especially with these flowers. They're very colorful.
Okay.
And one thing about orchids, you ever go to an orchid competition, you're going to get blown away with the colors.
Okay.
Now, let me see if this.
Thank
No,
you.
You're welcome. Why won't it go? Let me see what's going on with Photoshop here. Photoshop. Okay. It doesn't want to go. Okay, for some reason. So we'll go with the flow. And so what I'll do is now, instead of going over there, I am going to go again with my little masking tool, create a new mask, and I'm going to use a radial gradient. And I'm going to put my little gradient right over here. And I'm going to darken it down a slight bit. Of course, I want it to look like a nose. Nose has nostrils. And now I can actually go on top of this. I hit my control. And it will duplicate this. And it moves it off. That's the new thing that it used to be right on top of it. And I had a big problem with that. Okay. And I'm going to go on top of it. And I want to get the same. So if I hit Command H, why is it going now there? I did not want to go there. Okay. Okay. So let's go over here to exposure, a little exposure. So it's starting to look a little bit more like a nose, but when you darken things up or lighten things down, so that's, hue and so not hue and saturation, but when you start to do that, what happens is you're actually changing colors also. So if you lighten things, they tend to get more yellowish if you just use a light and dark. And if you darken things, they'll get more sort of like a wonky color. So when I darkened it down, I'm adding yellow to it to get it back. I can add a little pink because there's a lot of pink or magenta in this, and this magenta reflects back on everything else. And over here on the nose, what I want to do is I want to create a new mask, and I'm going to make another little radial gradient. I'm going to put that right here. And this time I am going to, come on, baby, fire, there you go. And this time I'm going to increase the exposure. There. And so it's starting to look like Mr. Schnoz, okay? And if I want to do shadows and highlights, which I do, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new mask. And this time I'm going to select the brush. And in my brush, I'm going to come down here. And first thing is I'm going to take the flow, and I'm going to bring the flow all the way down. So flow is just how much ink, I'll call it, is on your brush. And I'm going to keep my feather up high. And I'm going to take my exposure and I'm going to turn it all the way up. And then I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to make a smaller brush by using the right and left bracket keys. And over here, I'm going to go right under here and I'm going to paint back and forth. Okay. And I'm going to paint here back and forth. And we're going to do this. We're going to give this little highlight. We're going to try to make this look more like a sack, which it is. It's a sack. And over here and over here. Okay. I'm now using my Wacom tablet, I have to admit. Okay. So things that are in the foreground are a little bit lighter. Things in the background are a little bit darker. And okay, so now I'm going to make a new mask and I'm going to put brush. And by the way, you can name them. In other words, this one over here, where was that? That's brush 3. Okay, there. This, I'm losing control of which brushes I have. So this new mask over here, I'm going to name this over here. Come on. Okay. New mask. All right. We won't name it, but we're going to make it dark. And once again, I'm going to keep the flow way down. And so going to burn in the bottom, the edges, because that's how you make something look round. I'm going to put in a little bit right across here. I'm going to make my brush a little smaller. And then going to accentuate any places that have little divots in them or dimples. And back here, since this is behind everything, I'm actually going to make the whole thing a little bit darker. And we want to come in here because these side places seem to draw my eye, and I don't want my eye to be drawn out. Okay. And down in here, I want to give it roundness. I'm using a Wacom pen tablet, and I definitely recommend anybody and everybody to get one. And you have to practice your strokes. Like, how do you make this round stroke? And I put my hand down on the tablet and I just rotate it in the stroke. Rotate it, just like a paintbrush. Okay, so over here, I'm going to paint it. And it's just like painting. And if you remember back to when you were a kid, you used to paint, at least in the first and second grade. So you want to give this a little bit more oomph to it. And now this part, you can see, got washed out. I don't know if we'll be able to paint that in. If I was in, I'm going to try it. Okay, create a new one. And we're going to use a brush. And let's see if they have colors. There's a little red, and it needs a little blue in it. No. No. Okay. Let's pick a color. Let's go over here. So under color, if I put my eyedropper down and I go across and then up, it's going to pick up that color. So it's up there. And let's see if it paints with it now. And what I want to do is brush. I want to increase the flow. I decreased the flow before. So now we're starting to get some color. And it might be too much. We'll see. Now we can decrease it. And if I was in Photoshop, I would be able to blend that in absolutely perfectly. But here is a picture of the schnoz. Right? Now, the other thing is when you're going back on something, we'll get ourselves another brush. And we're going to go to saturation. We're going to decrease saturation. And we're going to decrease clarity. There. And we're gonna come up here, make our brush bigger. How did we get there? Oh, I don't know. History, mask update. Okay, here we go. There, we're gonna go to new brush. We're gonna decrease clarity. We're gonna decrease sharpness. And we're gonna add a little more exposure to it. And we're gonna go on top. And now we're gonna go over here, we're gonna decrease that. Okay, so I want the luminosity of this to be less than anything else around. And if I take a look, this is almost 40, and these here are 50, 60. Okay, and this behind here is a 43, 44, which is just about the same level as that. So I'm gonna give it a tiny little bit. So what we're trying to do is to build up a dimensionality that's on there. And without going too much more crazy about it, I like that. I can give it another one thing here, which you can do with a lot of things, is a new radial mask. And I'm coming across. And this is my center object. And I'm going to just touch on the side over here. Instead of doing exposure manually, I'm lighting that up. And I'm going to increase that 2, 3, 4. And if I don't like it's too much, I'm going to bring it down. And these areas over here, here and here, I think they're just a little too bright. So once again, a radial gradient over here, and I can turn it and shape it to what I want. The majority is going to happen in the center. And so we're going to take the highlights and bring those down. And if you bring them down too much, it just gets muddy. There. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to duplicate this by hitting Control. There. It says duplicate radial gradient. There. Comes to the side. So we're going over here. I'm going to flip it around so it faces the other way. And I'm going to see what it looks like. So this was our initial picture. And if I hit the backslash key, it gives me my original picture. And this is where I am now. I like what I have now. And so I'm going to go on. Let's see what else we have. Okay. There we go. And we're going to go into the develop module. And this was when it was imported. And the big thing here is that this is the part that I really want to see. This is nice, it's beautiful, but this is what I want to see. So the first thing I want to do is to use my crop tool. And I can use these as guide points. You can set it up to do the thirds. You can do the Fabronian, whatchamacallit. But you see on the bottom here, this is all taken because of the high contrast between here and here. My eye is drawn down there. And I want my eye to be coming up here. This is what I want. Okay. So now if I hit return, it puts it there. And anytime I want to come back, okay, all I have to do is hit the R key and it brings me back. And that could be 10 years from now. And that's what I'm doing is I'm going back to many of my pictures that I did 10 years ago. And it's amazing the advances of what I've done and what Adobe has done. So I'm very, very happy about that. So the first thing I'm going to do is to bring down my highlights. And you notice the histogram is moving. Okay. And if I want to make it brighter, I make it brighter and my histogram moves to the right. So I just move the highlights back a bit. I wanted everything to be a little bit brighter. Lighter and brighter. Okay, and now I want to do something to this yellow is not good. I could crop this up a little bit and get rid of that yellow because I'm only interested in the face over here. And I still have a tiny little bit of it. There we go. And I'm almost at a square. So why not make it a square? So under custom, go for the square. And what I now try to do is to frame it so the distance between here and here and here and here is the same. So I'm going to leave it like that. So your eye makes you can't help it. Your eye just makes this framing automatically. And the background here, and you see especially the white, is so bright, it just knocks everything off. So the next thing we're going to do is make a mask. And let's see what happens if we get a subject mask. Wow, it did the mask I wanted it to do, except for this part. So I want to subtract. And I want to go away. Go away. Go away. Hazel, you've gotten too many emails. Away, away, away. Aha. Now I think I know what the problem is. Some reason or other, Mike. Okay. So we're going to try that again in a few seconds. But all right. So over here, what I want to do is I want to get rid of this part. By the way, this mask is red and this is red. So if I just touch this now, I can get a green mask. Isn't that cool? And I can make it very opaque. I can make it so it's not at all. So now I have a green mask and I have this part showing, and I don't want that there. So I'm going to subtract and I'm going to use my brush. And you see it has a little minus in there. And I make sure that I have turn on overlay. So if I don't have overlay turned on, oh no, if I don't have auto mask turned on, which it's off now, and if I go across this, you see it's just going to go wherever my brush is touching. And I don't want that. I want more of an exacting. So if I do Control Z, it puts it back. So where are we? We're going to do show overlay and what happened to my mask? Okay, there. Okay. All right. Well, there. Sometimes things disappear, and it disappeared. So anyway, I'm going to have to be careful when I do this. And I don't know if I really like being that careful, but I'm going to do it. So I'm going to subtract. I'm going to use a brush. Oh, now it's there. So now it says auto mask. So now I'm going to do this. And you see, even though the top part of the circle is on my subject, the bottom part that has the minus or the plus is on the part that I want to get rid of. Now, if I was using a mouse, this would take me a year and a day. And so that's why I don't use a mouse. And even with my fingers, I have a pretty good dexterity with my fingers on the pad, but still. Okay, so now we have that. I'm gonna decrease my mask. Okay, now let's see what happens if I increase the exposure on this. Okay, now you noticed all these red things happen, and that's showing me, and if I did the histogram, and it's telling me I'm off the chart. So come back. See if we just turn our highlights down. Not enough, but we got to come back. You don't want to go off the chart because that will kill your picture. All right. And let's see, as long as I'm there, I'm going to increase my contrast a little bit. Everything is that's a favorite little thing of many people, just a little bit. So this is opening up my shadows, and you can see on the back of his head, we have those shadows. We're going to increase or decrease the whites. I'm going to bring them down a tiny bit. And let's see what happens with the blacks. I don't like it for that. All right. So now I have this mask here, and if I touch that, it says duplicate and invert the mask. So there's my other mask. And now this time I am going to darken that down. And you see by darkening that down, it causes this to pop up. It's more in front of you. So anything in front of you, you want it to pop up. And by the way, this picture has foreground, which is this. It's not overwhelming and it's out of focus. So it's foreground. The subject is midground and this is background. And now we're going to use a new tool that we haven't done before. And we're going to use a linear gradient. And so linear gradients, you start out and up to here, it gives you about 50% of your gradient and then it falls off. And so if I do my exposure and I darken it down, what I want to do first is take out the highlights and take out the shadows. And then I want to bring it down a little. And it's very bright purple. So I want to get rid of that. So let's find out where the saturation. I want to take out some of that saturation. And so that's one gradient. And then we're going to do this. And we're going to do another linear gradient. And this time we're going to come in from this side. And we're going to make the exposure down a little bit. I don't want to make it black. I just want it down a little so I can still see what's behind there. And as I bring it down, it tends to saturate things. So as you darken things, they also get saturated. So I'm going to decrease the saturation. And I don't need the color back there as much. And the last place I'm going to do that is a new gradient. We're going to do another linear gradient. We're going to top here. And we're going to bring down the exposure there a little. So that was our beginning. And now we can actually start to see the face. Now, one thing is I did bring this down too much. So I don't have it. I'm going to brush it. And we're going to increase the exposure. We're going to come back here. And then up here. And this part here is a little bit too light. So I'm going to again do a brush. We're going to make exposure down. Obviously, that's too much. So we come over here, bring it down a little bit. Yeah, so my instructor this week, his favorite measurement is just a little bit. That's all, just a little bit. And now I want to do is to lighten up her nose a little. Let's make her nose happy. So we're going to make her nose happy. We're going to get a brush. We're going to put it over here. I'm going to decrease the size of my brush with the bracket key. I'm going to come over here. Okay, look at her nose. We're going to give this a, okay, so all of a sudden now, and you can see that's before, and now, there. And so this is what I do, going back and forth and back and forth. And why don't we have some questions? Sandy? Hello?
I'm sorry, I had myself muted.
Oh,
Any questions? Does anybody have any questions? There's no question in the chat room right now.
okay.
Yeah, Paul,
but-
I had a question, Paul. Do
Yeah.
you often do your editing in the lab color profile?
Yeah, I always use lab.
And then,
I've given up with RGB.
so do you convert it into RGB when you're gonna
No,
print? So you
No,
just
no.
leave it in lab?
no, I leave it in RGB, Adobe RGB, but I change my, the way I look at things, I look at things in, let's see, how do I change this? Control, there. Show info, here, show lab value colors,
Okay,
okay? So I set it in that because that's what, I don't know, if you ever read a book by Dan Margolis,
yes.
he can drive you crazy. He's such a genius. And I've read his book 5 times and I get confused. It's a big book. It's like a telephone book. I've attended a number of courses with him. Man is brilliant. But the one thing that I remember is LAB, not lab. It's not lab. It's light, A and B. So you're separating your colors. One thing while I'm here, I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, it did. Thanks.
Okay, so I'm going to close this and I'm going to show you something I showed Sandy the other day, because a picture consists of color, which is tint, texture, and tone. Tone is the black and white. I'm going to convert this to a black and white. And if it doesn't look good in black and white, so I'm going to do this black and white inside a Lightroom. Normally I would go to Photoshop and I would do it over there. But now down here is a black and
Paul?
white. Yes, ma'am.
We've got several suggestions about what's going on in terms of your inability to get to Photoshop.
I think I figured it out though.
Okay,
I think it was my hard drive that had disconnected. Let me see. Yeah, you see? It was my hard drive that disconnected. I finally realized that. It does that. It's been doing that today. But thank you for everybody. But I just want to show you in Lightroom. So if I go here, and now I have these sliders, and if I go back and forth with the sliders, I can get myself a little bit better with the toning. And I go one slider at a time. Now, if I bring this down, you see over here, the nose, I'm going to lose, I want the highlight to stay there. And the same thing here is yellows. And so if I bring down the yellows, now I'm starting to get more shadow and highlights. And the greens, they're just about gone. Aqua, the blues. So a lot of times when you have white, you have blue that's mixed in there. So look at now, all of a sudden, if I bring this down, look what it did to the picture. All of a sudden it's enhancing my picture. And the purples. And here's magenta. Now what I'm going to do, okay, and by the way, I can save this if I go over to this history thing and it's called snapshot. I did a plus on a snapshot and I'm going to put black and white. And what that does is if I go into my history, I can now go back to my snapshots, and anytime I want, I just hit black and white and it'll come back to that. Now, I'll show you that in a second. So now if I go to the basic, back to basic, and I hit color, I don't know if you noticed the difference that happened. Let's see. We're going to go back to magenta gray. We're going to go back to this right here. There. So that's before converting to black and white and working on the tones in black and white. So that's the way that looked. And we can do a snapshot on that. Okay, we'll put edit 1. Return. That's our black and white. Go to the history. We're going to go there. And we're going to take another snapshot of that. And we'll call it edit 2. And now this is edit 1, black and white. So I don't know if you can see how much it's brought it out, but I normally will do a black and white and then put it on top as a luminosity blend. So let's see, do we have enough time to do one more? Let's see if we can find another one. Aha, cool. Okay, so this is a 1-to-1. This was actually done in my basement. I used 5 different lights on it. Kenny would be proud of me. So this is a 1-to-1 macro with 5 flashes in my basement. And first one I'm going to do is auto. Boink. Good. And I like the idea so that these line up exactly if you want, or it's on a slant. But let's go ahead and we can rotate it. What I'm doing is I'm looking at this and that. And I hit return. And let's look at it at 100%. Not bad. Pretty good. Let's even go to 200%. We don't need to, but you can see the detail that's in this thing. This is a non-cropped right out of the camera. You don't need to go beyond 100% because you're never going to print, your prints are not going to go up, not going to see it at 100%. So you can do your editing so you can see it better. Look, my name got screwed up over there. But, and you notice the dimensionality here. You have the more 3-dimensional picture because the lights were controlled. And if you have a light that's going around off perpendicular, so, 45, 45, you have a light that comes down, even at this level, how you can get yourself a very nice, like rim lights. You want to decrease as much as you can sharp shadows. There's a little shadow there. I want to take the highlights down to get rid of, you see the red that was forming there. I want to bring that down just a tiny, and I'm going to bring and I keep increasing my exposure and decreasing my highlights. And so now I'm just going to take this and I'm going to jump right into Lightroom. So here we are in Lightroom, and here we are in Lightroom. Say it enough. Hello, Lightroom. Where are you? There we go. Okay. So we are in Lightroom. Hit my hand, bring it over to the side. So I'm going to show you what I did or what I would do with a picture like this today. I would duplicate this. And don't forget, this was taken in, I forget, around 2011 with a 12 megapixel camera, 5 different lights on it, 1-to-1 macro using, I'll have to take a look. It's either a 200 or a 105 Nikon macro lens. There. Okay, so I would go to filter. First thing I like doing now is going to topaz to noise. And if I bring this back and forth, you can see over here, if you see these little white dots, and that's the reflections off of the lights. And we can get rid of them. I don't know if I have enough time to show you how to do that, but we'll do this. Okay. And the next thing I am going to do to show you the, I'm going to make a copy of this. Files are getting big, but anyway. And if I go into my black and white filter, Nick Collection, Silver Effects Pro. So it looks like a pretty nice black and white right to begin with. Come on. I'll have to use, there we go. So I go to the bottom, first thing is I'm looking at filters to go over this. This is the neutral filter. And if I put a red filter on it, you see what happens. It takes away some of that darkness. And let's try it orange. Okay, yellow. It makes it darker, green. Ooh, blue, yuck. So we don't want blue and green, that's for sure. So now I'm going to go between orange and that. I like my orange. Then I'm going to go between my red and my orange. I like my red. And this is without any filter. And so I do like my red. And okay, I'm going to have to use my regular computer to do that. Okay. So then you just start working my way down the low, just down the thing. And if I push the lightness up, I don't like it, and I keep coming back and forth to taste. It's like putting salt in something. And the highlights. Okay, so good black and white picture has everything from white to black. My highlights, my shadows, and dynamic brightness, which is cool. And I'm going to increase the contrast a tiny bit. Now, while I'm out here on the top, you see there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 grayscale dots. And if I touch the dot, that means I'm looking at zone 1. There's zone 2, number 9. There's nothing in zone 2. Zone 3. Okay, so zone 3, we're starting to see, you see these little cross hatches? They're in pink, and the cross hatch, I hope you can pick it up on your computer screen. So that means I'm in zone 3. Now, if I want to take and brighten up those 2 areas or darken them down, and this time we're going to, for the fun of it, we're going to brighten them up. I come back with a control point, and I put that right here, and I decrease that size. And now I can go over here and it's going to work. You got to work it with these values here. Okay, so you're not working with the top values now, you're working with the values below the control points. And now I can take that and I can darken it, lighten it. I can get rid of it if I want to. I can take the luminance down, up. You can play with the structure. You can do the whites. And there I am in the tones, and I can bring down now my tone. So it's not so bright. Don't forget, tones are bright and dark. And if I hit my Option key, and I can take this and I can drag it to the other side, and it did the same thing there. And if I hit my Option key again, I can bring it down a little further. And if I want to get rid of these, I just take this, put it here, here. So that's if I wanted to do that. And what happens is now you have all these control points, and you can combine all the control points from here. And if you hit Shift to there, and you can put them together as a single point. How do we do that? Do that. It's called Group 1. So that's Group 1, and you can then play with that. So after I'm finished with doing everything here, and I see the time is going on, I'm not going to go crazy. I'm just going to, if I wanted to, I could save this particular thing. So it says Save Preset. So if you press on that, and you can save that, and you can do macro den for dendrobium, and it's going to save it. And therefore you have all these things on the side saved things. So if you want to go back, you have those. And now I'm going to apply this. Give it a second to render. And so it's now in black and white over here. And if I go there and I say luminosity, there's without it, and there's with it. So you did your tones, you did your luminosity. If you want to sharpen it, what I like to do is actually sharpen in my black and white layer. And I'll sharpen it by using filter, other, high pass. And then I look very carefully, and you can see that's not good. So I want to go just to the point where it's very slightly under there. And I hit OK. And normally I would hit Shift Command U if I was doing it on something that was okay. Oh, I didn't duplicate. Okay, let's go back, 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 back. There. Duplicate. There. So now I'm going to do the luminosity, the filter, other, high pass. I'm going to go OK. There. So this is an overlay. And I don't know if you can see the difference, how it brought out the little hairs, but you have all these little hairs in here. So it brought out all the little hairs. And now I'll join these together. So that's, I want to put everything together at once. Shift, Option, Command E. That's called a claw. And then I want to bring everything down. Shift, Command E. And now if I want to save it, I do Shift, Command S. And it brings something out. And it says save on my computer. And now I'm going to give it a unique name. So that was it there. And I'm going to call this 0.01. Return. It's saved as a TIFF. And it's already saved. I'm going to go back to my Lightroom. And there it up here, it says, you know, that's what it is, 0.01. And aside from other things, which I want to touch up, but you know, there's a lot of these cobwebs on here. And when they ship these flowers, they tend to have little hairs on them. So you got to get all that off. But there's a lot of work here of getting rid of all these little goober things, these black dots. Here, there, this is bright over here, this is dark, that's bright, that's bright. So I want to get rid of these. I want to darken down this because that's I don't want that. I want to do a brush. I want to get my exposure down. I want to bring this up. You don't want to have high contrast, especially at your edges, because it leads the eye off of the picture. And you don't want the person's eye to go off the picture. And you can bring that exposure down quite a bit now. And if we want to get rid of that, we'll create another mask and we'll do a brush. And this time we're going to use dehaze. And let's see how that works. And let's add a little bit of getting rid of the highlights. Aha. So it's starting to go. We don't want to turn it black. And then if I went, you're going to hate me. Do you hate me? No. No, I don't want to quit. No. Why did you do that? Well, anyway, I quit. So I didn't want to, but I did. Let's start Lightroom over there. See, and it ejected the disk again, and I have no idea why that happens. And it says file could not be found. Anyway, okay. So the other thing I just wanted, it's like 25 after 9 now. So I think that's pretty, you know, to get that type of detail is quite amazing. But that's because it was done in a studio setting, use of multiple lights. It took me a couple of hours to set this up because it's very, very, very particular. You know, many pictures, many, you just have to have patience and time. And then afterwards, you know, you have to do some post-processing. As Ansel Adams said way back in the film days, it was 30% taking the picture, 30% darkroom, and 30% presentation. Today, I think I like to think it along as ideation ahead of time, thinking about what we're going to do, going ahead and doing it. In other words, taking the picture, then making the picture, and post-processing, and be creative on top of that. So that's about it. When you go to a lot of these places, including Longwood, I would recommend getting there when they open up. I recommend that you have all your equipment ready to go, that you're not first, you know, including putting your camera on a tripod, making sure that you have extra batteries and film in your pocket or wherever you want to keep it handy. test your camera and your equipment ahead of time so that you're not futzing around. If you're in a car and you're going into a hothouse or conservatory, it's hot and humid. And if your car was a little cold or you're in a motel room that had air conditioning, the second you get in there, you're going to have condensation on your lens and your camera. And then you're going to spend 40 minutes trying to get rid of it. So you have to climatize your camera. Use a tripod whenever possible. If you have a camera that's not mirrorless, you shoot mirror up. You use an off-camera trigger. And there are ways to get around that, like at Longwood, you can't use tripods after 12 o'clock in the conservancy. But what I've done is I've taken my backpack or a camera bag, put it on the front of my body, and have a mini tripod standing on top of it. Although I was almost arrested at the Smithsonian because they said, that's a tripod. You're not allowed to use them. I said, BS, I'm using it. I'm going to get my supervisor, get whoever you want. Eventually they just left me alone. But so you can take the mini tripod, and I also just rest it against my chest. So I extend one leg out real long and I put the other two legs against my scapular. And so that sort of keeps it down. A third way of doing it is taking a bungee cord, attaching one end of it to the camera, and you take two other parts and you stick them under your feet, tie a knot on them, make sure it doesn't spring back on your face. And as you pull it up, and then you rest it very securely against your cheekbones and your forehead, you get yourself basically a tripod. So you can do those things if you have to, and many a times you have to. And the other thing is, when you're using a tripod, don't get in anybody else's way. And even if they allow you to use it on the walkways, don't obstruct the walkways. Be cognizant of what you're doing. The best days to go there are early Tuesday morning, least amount of people. That's about it. Sandy, any other
But-
questions?
Well, thank you so much, Paul.
I do have a question. This is
Go on.
Sarah. Way back when you were doing adjusting colors in Lightroom, you said, now what I would do is go to Photoshop and blend these colors. And I know you don't have time to show that probably, but what tools do you use to do that?
Okay. All right. So here I am in Photoshop, and you see I have all this white. White and black are not a color. Okay, white and black are not a color. So if I put my brush tool on and I go up here and I go into the color mode. So your brush also has all the same modes as you have with your layers. So so you have my color mode now. And if I come over here and let's say this green, if I hit the option, here's my green color. And I just very gently paint on it, and I keep taking now. One secret that I do with this is that I'll pick the color. So now the color is in my color picker, and I'm going to make it a little lighter and brighter. And then over here, I'm going to put down to color the lighter color. And now I want to make that a little bit darker, deeper and darker. and just gently painting it.
Okay, thank you.
So I don't know if you can, I'll take that off. There it is. So that's where time, and if you don't have time, don't get involved. So, you know, this is just a time factor. And as you work things out, you're going to wind up finding shortcuts and things that you like to do, and then you're going to repeat them. Anyway,
Thank
that's
you.
what I have. If anybody has any questions or wants any help with any of these things, please let me know. And I'll be happy to help you. And I don't know if I'll be able to go to Longwood in after the summer with you guys, but have a great time there. It's one of the nicest places in the world.
Hey,
All
Paul,
right.
Yeah.
I have a question for you.
on.
I know you do a lot of artistic photo work.
Yes.
So in today's in today's work that you're doing now, what is the percentage of your work that's more artistic versus more of the natural shot?
Starting to approach 100%.
Really?
I mean, when you learn the what's going on with this? There. When you learn Tafts. Yeah, like this. This is artistic.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
what I'm talking about.
Okay. So when you learn to use the tools that you learn to paint, digitally paint, you can use those tools to be photorealistic. They don't have to look artistic.
Mhm.
So there are many a times when you want to do things beyond, you know, what you can do your little sliders. And that's why you have a pen and you can start to, you know, blend things together and put things together. But just about everything I do these days, I find, to me, I've become more and more of a digital artist.
Yeah, I do like your digital artwork, and that's one thing I admire.
Yeah.
I know you trained under Sandra Pierce a lot.
Yes.
We'll be in the same class this year.
All right, Kenny.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
What
yeah,
was that name?
Sandra Pierce.
Oh,
No,
okay.
yeah. So Sandra, this is going to be, I was speaking with her yesterday. So that's this is all artwork that's been done to an original file. I don't have the original files here. This is all artwork.
Mhm.
And it's artwork. This is tremendous amount of art. That's me walking down the flower path in Longwood Gardens. And yeah, I had to do a lot of things to, you know, to make this enhance this. One of the nicest pictures I like.
Right.
That's not artwork. It's not. That's artwork. And this is when you go visit the tulips and you'll see that the petals fall off of the tulips. Well, you don't have to do a thing except just take a picture of the tulip. The magnolia, all I did was, you know, lighten and darken on this thing. That I did nothing with. Okay, that's artwork.
Mhm.
Okay, just building in the background and so, yeah.
Your artwork is phenomenal, and
Well, thank you.
I do like your artwork, and I'm very interested in working with Sandra this year.
Oh, you'll love it.
Yeah,
See now,
I did a half a day with her through Maryland PPA.
right.
Things I learned in a half a day with her was just incredible. I still use it to this day.
Yeah. Well, she's going to start doing those and just going down to, you know, classes rather than a whole week.
Mhm.
She's a little younger than I am, and I don't know how she keeps up her schedule. So when I was at Longwood Gardens, they take the dead or the wilting water lilies out, and they took out this big water lily and they put it on the side. And I said, would you mind if I took a picture of it? So this is, let's see if I find the, so that actually is the, this is artwork, this bird was added and the berry was added into the bird.
Mhm.
This is artwork.
Nice.
There's a little bit of artwork in this, but not much. In this, I have a big one hanging over my bed. And this is just a story of a tiny little flower sitting on a mountainside with all these rocks and its beauty. And, it's the start of the journey.
Right.
Anyway, I think I've taken up enough of your time. I've probably
Paul-
gone over a little.
That's
I
okay.
apologize.
No apologies. And I just want to extend my gratitude for you speaking tonight, sharing your knowledge. I got a lot of comments about enjoying watching you work,
Mhm.
demonstration. So yeah, we're getting a lot in our chat room right now, just their gratitude for what you have done tonight. And I think we need to have these kinds of demonstrations, maybe more so. Maybe I'll do more of this.
Mhm.
So thank you, Paul.
You're very welcome, Sandy. And I don't know how much you people understand how great Sandy has been to your organization, what she does, and the amount of time and effort. Because I've been in a number of different organizations, and there are a couple of people that make them the hearts throb, and Sandy certainly is one of them.
Yes, she is.
Oh,
So
thank you, Paul. I appreciate
welcome.
it. Yeah, nice.
Okay.
All
Well, good
right,
night.
everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate
You're
it.
welcome, Kenny.
Yes.
Good night, Hazel.
Yes, good night, Hazel.
Good night, John boy.
Good night, Grandpa.
Good night, Kenny.
All right, take care, everyone.
Bye,
Night,
Paul.
Paul.
Thank you again. Thank
You're
you,
welcome.
everybody, for attending. I'm going to end now. Bye, Kenny. Ending the meeting for all.